yeah, so this is going to be another little photo book review. We're using the same book that I did before. This is Photo Nomad. And I was kind of thumbing through it the other day, and I came across a section that I really liked. And I like it for a very specific reason that we'll get into. Now, as you may know, I have a degree in art. I went to film school, so that's kind of my forte, would be film. And I think with that gives me a certain capability of bullshitting, because I think a lot of, like, especially art is really just justifying some kind of comparison, trying to, like, rationalize a decision that was made, even if that decision was made with, like, actual intent to have deeper meaning. I think it's trying to rationalize that, even, like I said, even if it is the original intention is to have that deeper meaning, you have to kind of explain that some way, either through action or by kind of stating it outright that this was the intent of the piece. And I think that also kind of walks into other points of my life, at least, where you can see abstract comparisons within, like, historical events, within, like, people's actions. You know, it's like a psychological thing of, like, people will kind of behave in certain particular ways, and you can kind of graph that. The more you know people, the more you kind of know how they act. You can draw these kind of comparisons. So I think it's kind of beneficial to have that idea. And also, it's the same with cameras. Like, there's a lot of through lines of similarity between all these different systems. Being able to, like, dilute that down to base function kind of helps you understand things a little bit better. So I find that to be helpful, and that's kind of leading us into this point of this book, and more primarily this one section. This is actually the final section of the book that I kind of want to discuss, talking about this, Sunflowers of Van Gogh. Now, of course, this is in reference to Vincent van Gogh. There's just something about this that I find interesting, because I think, like, when you're going through things, like, okay, for instance, when I was driving back from Oregon one year, I made the trip over to Salinas, which is where, like, Steinbeck kind of based a lot of his, like, Americanized novels, and I was kind of expecting to see this, like, kind of rural, blue-collar little town. Salinas, California is nothing like that, for the record, but I was kind of, like, thrown off a little bit because I was hoping to have, like, some kind of connection to this place, because I'd read some of his work, some of Steinbeck's work, and kind of had experienced it through that literary sense. So I thought going to that physical place would kind of, like, evoke this deeper feeling of, like, oh yes, I know this place. And maybe if I was, like, a little smarter, I could kind of piece that together, but it's fine. But seeing something like this, where the painting of Van Gogh, like, his kind of obsession with flowers, and primarily sunflowers, it's interesting because it's such a documentable thing. You can find, like, you just search his paintings and, like, you can see the sunflowers and, like, the effect that these flowers had on him. And so seeing this and, like, going to some of the similar fields that he might have used for reference for his paintings kind of evokes this, like, deeper feeling of connection with this artist who has been dead for, like, many years. And, like, the effect that this had in the translation of the painting of that imagery to this is fascinating. And then to an extension, to a much lesser extension, this video here, it's all translating through these different effects. I had a philosophy class, and the philosophy teacher was kind of a weird guy, but he had made a point to say something like, I don't remember the exact terminology, but it was a test question, and it was supposed to be, I was supposed to answer in, like, long form, like, writing, basically. I was supposed to comment on the teacher's observation about what someone else said, about what someone else said, about what Socrates said. So the dilution was, like, 4 times removed from the original source. as opposed to if it was just my comment on what Socrates said. I had to respond to like all these other delusions, and it was almost like playing a game of telephone, like throughout the transfusion of centuries and of different mental processes and of different contexts, worldwide context. The original message got so lost in that translation. But I think something like more visually like this, it still can kind of evoke these same feelings, and even more so like different feelings. And I think adding context to that through words and through motion helps as well, which is why I think like something like film or, you know, visual media is such an impactful and powerful thing that can evoke so many more feelings, because I don't have to like directly express. Like if I was just talking to you, not showing you reference of this, I'd be like, oh yeah, it is a field of sunflowers, and that's open to your interpretation of what that means. But the fact that I have something concrete to point to, I think that is beneficial. And overall, I just find the whole process of creation to be interesting, because it all kind of exists within a world where all of the ideas you have are kind of predicated on the world around you, and on the ideas that other people have, which are also predicated on the world around them, and however they experience the world, the takeaways that they have, they curate within their own mind, and then they try and make some kind of formation out of it, in terms of like this photo, for instance, you know. And his idea was to capture these sunflowers in a way that was like reminiscent of the photos that he'd seen previously, or in a way that he thought would, you know, do them justice but still have his own spin on it. And my desire was to kind of draw that parallel. I really like this photo a lot because it's framed almost like a portrait, and I think it's served as a portrait. And the more you look at it, the more it personifies itself, you know, of a person. Like this is the hair, the dried up petals, the head of the flower would be the face. It's lit really well too. It's like this really nice, natural, warm light with like a slightly blue background. So there's like a little bit of contrast. And then like this deep green, it's like kind of faded into orange, is really nice too. This is impeccable as well. Just such a powerful image. I think this is one thing, like you see like this paintings of like the Midwest and stuff, and the wheat and the fields are vibrantly gold, and then the background is just this dark storminess, because the way that the light comes in and hits, it reflects so much off of the field. It adds this beautiful contrast that's just so alarming and so daunting to look at. But this is really why I wanted to talk about it, this whole thing, because this is just one of the most beautiful pictures I've ever seen. Like, I want to be here so bad. I want to just be sitting on a chair watching the sunrise or the sunset. Hard to tell. I'm gonna go with sunrise. But yeah, it just looks absolutely pristine. You got like this nice like low dew hanging over here in the background. All the flowers are kind of settled down. It's really remarkable. Going back to this writing piece needed here, his desire to pursue this as a subject was linked to his experience viewing Van Gogh's paintings. So he went through all of this struggle to get these photos because of his desire to capture something similar to something he enjoyed. Now, I wouldn't say that this is reminiscent of a Van Gogh painting per se, outside of the subject itself, but I think that like the idea of taking something that motivates you, that drives you, and then putting your own spin on it by photographing it as opposed to painting it, and by framing it how he would any other photo, I think that really speaks to the idea of admiring the abstraction while creating your own work, if that makes sense. And I also just want to point out again, because I was just rereading this, and I kind of skipped over the part where he talks about how hot it was, and you kind of feel that in this. There's warmth to it naturally because of like the tungsten light and stuff, but there's still like this there's this comfort in the image itself. Because like I imagine like if you've walked through like a field before, like plants and stuff like that, there's this like weird moisturized heat, and you can kind of feel it's like this vacuum that kind of like pulls the air in, and it's very interesting, especially like walking in a field like right as the sun goes down. The air starts to kind of cool, but the ground air is still really warm. It's like radiating from the dirt, and it just has this weird feeling of life. You know, obviously there's a lot of life because it's a field full of plants, but just this idea of seeing this image kind of evokes that feeling in me, and that's like not a feeling I've had for a while because I've kind of been living in more urban areas lately. So I just, that to me, that speaks to me on like a deeper level because it's based upon my experience. Now, if you're watching this and you've like never lived near a field, or you live near a field currently, you know exactly what I'm talking about, or you have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, that's the kind of thing that interests me, or I could be talking about my experience because it's my experience, and to me it makes complete sense. But if I'm explaining it to someone else who has no recollection of my own experience, or doesn't have anything to draw a comparison to within their own experiences, trying to find a way to dilute that through language is very difficult. Now, trying to find a way to transmit that feeling and evoke that emotion that they might not know through imagery, I think is much more effective and much more impactful. So that's just something that I've been thinking about a lot lately as I'm trying to like gear myself up to do more, you know, creative endeavors and things like that. And I think that something like this, where I'm just like rambling at a camera to myself, it kind of excites me a little bit more because I begin thinking about these things at a different depth than I would naturally. So I hope you enjoy watching this kind of thing. I don't know how many of these I will really do, to be honest. Like I had initially thought of like, oh, I'll make like a little series of me just like talking through this book or through other books, but truthfully, I don't want it to be like a forced thing. I don't want it to be like, next Wednesday, expect another one of these. You know, I feel like it's much more meaningful if it comes from just this natural desire to talk about stuff. So I'll probably limit myself to that. And I was actually watching this other video the other day. I was talking about like, if you're a creator on YouTube, you need to script your videos. And I will probably be scripting certain videos. But for the most part, I'm not going to, because I just, one, I don't have the time to really do that, and two, it just feels so forced. I feel so stupid, because I'm like, me sitting here like, oh, I gotta make sure to hit that talking point. Like, I write down notes sometimes, especially in terms of like repair stuff. If we have like a lot of repairs to get to, I'm like, oh, I'll make like a note of like, I gotta make sure I talk about this. I'll make mental notes of stuff or whatever. But for something like this, it's like, I don't know. I could probably do a better job formulating my thoughts if I like sat down and wrote it out, but I'm much more of a off the top of my dome kind of dude, so I hope that works for you guys watching, because I probably won't be changing that anytime soon. Anyway, that's pretty much it, I think, for now. I just wanted to really touch on these because I think this is just like a beautiful portion, especially this photo. I cannot express to you enough how much I love this photo. I think mostly the contrast of colors here really, I find just beautiful. Yeah, like this, oh man, this just makes me want to be there so bad. So even if it was like 120 degrees, I think I will leave it there. And I hope that you kind of enjoy this little segment. I enjoy doing them, I really do, but like I said, it has to come from a natural place, a desire to talk about these things, which I don't always feel because I've been very mechanically minded lately, so it's kind of hard to flip that switch and start working on poeticism and stuff. So I appreciate you watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, comment below if you enjoyed this. If you have any thoughts or feelings towards it, I would love to hear them. And if you have any like book ideas that I should look into, let me know that too, because I would like to at least have a few more books so I can think about doing more of these. I don't have to keep flipping through the same book, even though that is a stinking good book. I really enjoy it, and catch you on the next one.